Completely untenable. You can't be a professional gambler in the US. But this will impact all the players, and it will impact industry. And it would be crazy if it got through, but it certainly could.
Poker in America is finished. That's not a scare tactic. It's the brutal reality facing every professional and high-volume player after a law slipped through Congress in July of 2025. Hidden inside a 900-page bill, a single line of tax code threatens to erase the game as we know it. The timing couldn't be worse. America has spent the last 2 decades clawing poker back from the shadows of Black Friday, rebuilding live tournaments, creating streaming empires, and giving fans hope that the game had finally secured its future. But this time, it's not the Department of Justice kicking down the door, it's the IRAs. So what happened? On July 4th, President Trump signed what he branded the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, a massive, sweeping piece of legislation meant to cover everything from tax relief to budget maneuvers. Lawmakers barely skimmed it, most didn't even read it, and buried deep inside was a provision that changes how gambling income is taxed in the United States. For decades, players had one safeguard: the ability to deduct their gambling losses against their winnings. If you won $200,000 in tournaments, but lost $200,000 along the way, you broke even. Uncle Sam stayed out of it. That system recognized what poker really is, a long-term high-variance grind where profit only makes sense when you measure wins and losses together. But starting January 1st, 2026, that safety net disappears. Under the new law, players can only deduct 90% of their gambling losses. At first glance, 10% might not sound catastrophic, but run the numbers and it becomes a guillotine. Picture this. You're a grinder who wins $200,000 across a year of play, but you lost exactly the same amount in buy-ins and tough sessions. By all logic, you broke even. Under the old rules, you'd owe nothing. Under the new rules, you can only deduct $180,000 of those losses. That leaves $20,000 in phantom income you never touched. And the IRS wants its cut. Now scale that to high-stakes poker. Phil Galfond illustrated it with a chilling example. Imagine you win $200,000 over 12 months, but across thousands of hands and tournaments. Your gross wins are $5.2 million and your gross losses are $5 million. Your actual profit is still $200,000, yet under the new tax code, you'd be taxed as if you made $700,000. The government isn't just taxing your profit, it's taxing money that never existed. This isn't an inconvenience, it's financial ruin. Almost every professional player would end up paying more tax than they actually made in a year. Doug Polk called it an industry killer. Phil Hellmuth described it as the death of poker in America. Chris Brewer summed up the feeling with brutal honesty. It was fun having a job. But this raises a bigger question. How did it even happen? Who in Washington decided to target poker pros, sports bettors, daily fantasy players, and casino grinders in one swoop? The answer, according to Nevada Senator Catherine Cortez, is budget gimmickry. Republican leadership needed to hide the bill's $4 trillion impact on the deficit. They scoured for places to raise revenue, and this obscure change to gambling deductions was quietly slipped in. No hearings, no debate, not even Ted Cruz, a senator who has actually played on Poker After Dark, realized what was in the bill before voting. The reaction has been swift and fierce. Professional players are calling it an existential threat. Entire communities on poker Twitter are mobilizing. And behind the scenes, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are scrambling to undo the damage before the law takes effect. Because this isn't just about poker. The new deduction cap hits every form of gambling in America: sports betting, daily fantasy, blackjack, roulette. And if it stays in place, it could push billions of dollars in gaming revenue offshore. That means fewer tournaments, fewer jobs, and a crippling blow to Las Vegas itself. And that's just the beginning. The poker world thrives on risk. Players accept swings, downswings, and variance as part of the deal. But no one, not even the most seasoned pro, could have predicted a government policy that weaponizes the tax code against them. Phil Galfond's breakdown went viral because it crystallized the nightmare. Professional poker is no longer financially viable under the new rules. Imagine playing a schedule packed with high rollers, traveling across the country, grinding through 10-hour sessions, and finally locking up a hard-earned $200,000 in net winnings. Instead of celebrating, you're slapped with a tax bill calculated as if you made 3 times that. You're forced to hand over money you don't have. In practice, the IRS becomes your toughest opponent, one you can't outplay. And the damage doesn't stop with players. Casinos, tournament organizers, and even entire cities stand to lose. Las Vegas depends on the World Series of poker, not just for rake and entry fees, but for the hotel rooms, restaurants, and entertainment dollars it generates. Nevada's gaming industry supports nearly a third of all jobs in the state. If professionals pull out because they can't afford the tax burden, the ripple effects hit waiters, dealers, hotel staff, and the broader local economy. This is why some analysts call it an offshore trigger. If players can't sustain themselves in the United States, they'll follow the money elsewhere. Big series could move to Mexico, the Caribbean, or Europe, anywhere tax law doesn't strangle profitability, and with them goes tourism, prestige, and billions in annual revenue. The same forces that once drove online poker players overseas after Black Friday could now hollow out live poker. But perhaps the most infuriating piece of this puzzle is how casually it was done. Senator Catherine Cortez revealed that the provision was slipped in as part of accounting tricks to mask the true size of the bill's deficit impact. Lawmakers didn't discuss it. They didn't debate its consequences. They didn't even appear to know it was there. Ted Cruz admitted bluntly, "None of us were aware of it." The reaction from industry groups hasn't helped either. The American Gaming Association, an organization that should represent the interests of players and casinos, inexplicably praised the bill when it passed. In a now infamous tweet, the AGA congratulated congressional leaders on passing the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, before quickly disabling comments as outrage poured in. For pros staring down financial extinction, it felt like betrayal from the very group meant to defend them. That betrayal was made worse by the sheer scale of what's at stake. This isn't just about nosebleed pros. Recreational players who itemize deductions could face surprise tax bills after a year of casual play. Sports bettors who grind out parlays and daily fantasy players who log hundreds of contests will all fall into the same trap. The higher your volume, the harsher the punishment. Even the Joint Committee on Taxation admitted this provision is projected to raise $1.2 billion over the next decade, but tax experts warn the cost to the gaming industry will dwarf that figure. It's the definition of short-term gain, long-term collapse. Meanwhile, ordinary players are being asked to do something unusual, call their representatives. Community leaders stress that poker has more political weight than it realizes. According to Congresswoman Dina Titus, constituent response to this issue has already eclipsed hot-button debates like food stamp reductions or medical program cuts. When recreational and professional gamblers flood phone lines and inboxes, Washington listens. The fight has even created strange alliances. Democrats like Cortez and Titus are pushing bills like the Full House Act and the Fair Bet Act to restore full deductions, and Republicans, embarrassed by the hidden provision, are beginning to backtrack. Ted Cruz, himself a poker enthusiast, has emerged as a surprising champion of repeal efforts. But here's the catch. Passing standalone legislation is notoriously difficult. Gridlock defines modern Congress, and even bipartisan outrage doesn't guarantee swift change. Tax expert Russell Fox gives repeal efforts only a 25% chance of success before the law takes effect. And every week that slips by brings the poker industry closer to its doomsday clock, January 1st, 2026. What's terrifying is how absolute this feels. For years, the narrative around poker in America has been resilience, surviving UIGEA, surviving Black Friday, surviving the pandemic. But this isn't about technology or enforcement. It's about the raw math of survival. You can't beat a tax code that charges you on money you never had. And as the countdown continues, the big question becomes, can poker be saved in time? The clock is ticking. On January 1st, 2026, the new rules hit. For professional poker players, that date isn't just a new year, it's the day their careers may end. And here's where I'll add something personal. Poker has survived every storm thrown its way. UIGEA in 2006, Black Friday in 2011, even the pandemic when casinos went dark. Each time, players adapted, rebuilt, and carried the game forward. But this time feels different. You can't outgrind the IRS. You can't move variance in your favor when the government taxes phantom income. This isn't a downswing, it's a death sentence written in legal text. The only real chance poker has is collective action. Players, fans, and industry workers need to make noise, pressure lawmakers, and demand change before January 1st. According to Congresswoman Titus, the sheer volume of calls and messages on this issue has already outpaced responses to healthcare cuts and food stamp reductions. That's power, and it's the kind of power poker has rarely used. Because if this law stands, the dream dies. Young grinders won't pursue careers. Mid-stakes players will step away. Pros will relocate offshore or quit entirely. And the next great poker boom in America, it won't happen. The game will shrink, fade, and eventually become just another casualty of politics. So is poker in the US finished? Unless something changes fast, yes. And if you think watching poker die by politics is painful, just wait until you see the stories of players who destroyed themselves without any help from Washington. Click here to watch poker pros who lost everything to addiction, the darkest and most personal side of the game.